Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I am Sokartika from TSI and I would be the moderator for this session. Today we are presenting File Merge presented by Ed Jordan. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the session, please click on the hand raise button so that you will be unmuted to proceed with your questions, or you can enter your question directly into the chat box. Now, without further ado, we'll turn the time over to Ed. Our presenter today is the Director of Software Development, who have been associated with TSI over 20 years. His forte are TPFC and assemblers. Ed?
Hi, this is Ed. Thank you, Sakartika. As she said, this webinar is about the file merge feature in zTPFGI. We also sometimes call it the three-way merge feature. And this is present in zTPFGI version 1.3.7. And in future versions, we already have some minor enhancements and bug fixes that will be coming out in this feature. So what is the file merge feature? It allows the differences between three files, two or three files, to be merged together to produce even yet another file, which we call the output file, which is like a new version of those two or three files, incorporating the differences that you wanted to be incorporated into that other file. So why would you use that? Why would you use this feature? So here's a little example. File 1 might be, for example, a TPF operating system source code file that IBM gave you a while ago, and you made some customizations. And the customizations might be present in file 2. That's the file you customized. And then TPF released another version of that file with some changes that IBM made. So now you have you have three versions, sort of a parent version of the file, and you have your customized version, and you have IBM's customized version, and you want to merge these together in light of the differences between those three files to produce yet another version, like your new customized version that you will use in the future. This wouldn't have to be just with operating system files, though. It might be you and another developer both modified the same file, and in light of the original file, you want to merge the changes together. You can also use it with just two files and merge the changes together. Here's an overview of and we'll be going into this in much more detail, and we're doing a demo, but this is a view of the entire file merge editor. Over here is represents the output file that's being created, and you're moving these over, and you're not changing any of these original files. You're creating yet another version, which then you can decide, where you want to put it and where to overwrite. I wanted to show a little bit of a difference between that and the file and the compare feature, which is already in zTPFGI. In this, you can also merge differences from one file into another, but there's only two files that you can consider, and you're always changing one of those files. So I can move this to the right, and that would change the file that I'm most concerned with. So that's a brief overview of the file merge feature, and I believe now we have a brief polling question for you based on what we've said so far, Sakartika. So the polling question would be, as far as you know, how often do you or your development group need to merge multiple versions of a file into a single file? Hopefully one of those answers will suit you. So you can go ahead and answer that. Okay, great. So we'll move over to the demo now and go in a lot more detail and more explanation about this feature. So I've come over to zTPFGI. You can start a file merge from either the projects view or the host files view. I'm going to do it from the host files view. So there's a couple of different ways to actually, yeah, and there's even a third way to start it, which I'll talk about also. But so what I'm going to do is multi-select the 3 files which I want to merge, and then right-click. Now these don't have to be in the same subfolder. They could be in different subfolders. But I'll right-click and do compare merge, and then merge selected. If I had only selected 2 files, it would be possible to do our compare feature instead if you wanted to. So I'll do merge selected. Then we get this dialog box, and it's taken those 3 input files that I selected and has put them here, file 1, file 2, file 3. You can see another way to start the merge would be just to open this dialog box and then drag and drop the files you wanted over into these squares. You can also do it that way. Once you do, the file information comes over here, and then there's a couple of other blanks too. And then once they come over here, if they're not in the order that you want, you can move them around with these arrows. I would say it's best to, you don't have to, but it's best maybe to put what you consider the nearest ancestor or the parent file up here and the other 2 versions down here. That'd be what I'd recommend, but you don't have to do it that way. We'll talk about some of these checkboxes in a moment. The output file is what will be created or overwritten by when you produce the output, the 4th version of the file. This file doesn't have to exist. You can see over here in the subdirectory, it actually doesn't exist yet. This was something I created. It saves your responses from previously. So this is something I'd done previously. So this doesn't exist yet. That's fine. It will be created when we decide to write the output file. So you've got the 3 inputs, the output. The 4th thing is the session name. And this is like a control file that we write onto your PC. And this remembers all the choices you're making as you go through and make choices about how to merge things together. It remembers what the 3 files are, what the date time of the 3 files are. It even remembers the original content of those 3 files. And then it remembers what decisions you've made about how to merge into the output file. But it is not itself the output file. It's a configuration file or a control file that remembers everything you've already done. So you can put any name you want to up here. If you repeat the name, it will be overwritten. I'm going to do just DFSA merge test. And then I'll click start, and that will start the merge. So here we have the merge editor. Just going to get a little more room. You can get rid of temporarily of these host file views and everything by going to the View tab and then clicking Max Editor, and that will expand it like that. And if you want the ribbon to be smaller temporarily, you're not going to be using it, you can just double-click the tab, and that will give you more room also. So we've opened the 3 input files into the merge editor, and on the right is the output file. And the output file doesn't exist yet. This sort of just represents what it would be, but we haven't written it yet. This is just exists in the control file and in memory right now. So as far, I think I'll start from the left and talk about this area, this editor. And by the way, you can have more than one of these open at a time if you want to, and they would just be tabbed. And you can have normal files open at the same time too, and they would just be tabs, and you could go to this editor. So the Navigator area shows you a visual, sort of an analog representation of the differences between the two or three files that you have. This bar represents file 1. It sort of has by default it has dark red, the red color, and this is the blue-green color, and that's file 2, and the purple color is file 3. And it shows where groups of differences were found and relative to where they are in in those files and how they are grouped together. You can also see that this says there are 5 unresolved differences. That is 5 differences where you haven't made any choices yet about how to resolve them. And this will update as you make choices. This area is the input area. And there are 2 different views. Actually, in the presentation slide, I showed this view because in some ways it's clearer. And that's file 1, file 2, and file 3. If you had only 2 files that you were, 2 input files, it would just be file 1 and file 2, and file 3 would be not be showing here. So what this shows is differences between 2 or 3 of the files were found, and the differences were grouped together. And right now we're looking at the difference area in each of those files. I'm going to switch over to the composite view. The composite view says, it shows exactly the same information, but only in one view. And all of these lines were the same in all 3 of the files. And after this, as far as we can see, all the lines were the same. But in this area, there were some differences. This red represents file 1, and it was different than file 2 because file 2 apparently deleted that line relative to file 1. Or perhaps file 1 added the line relative to file 2. You can look at it either way. When you see a line with hatch marks, that means that line isn't really there. We've just put in that line, sort of a ghost line, so that to mark where we are in file 2 or whatever file it is. So this line doesn't really exist. So this is like an empty space in file 2. File 1 has this difference, and then in file 3 you can see it's the same as file 1, except in the next line it added they added a comment. So these are grouped together, and we end up having differences here in this area between these 3 files. Let's go look at a different difference. Here's one where in file 1 there was no content here. In file 2, some lines were added, but they're different than the lines that were added in file 3. So these are grouped together. And over here in the output view, you can see we can make a choice to put one of these 3 sets of differences here into the output. Let me go ahead and, okay, here's a case where file 1 and file 2 were the same. File 3 apparently deleted the line that was in file 1, and so there's a blank line. It's not a blank line. It's not like an empty line. It just, there's nothing there at all, and that's what the hatch marks mean for these 3 differences, for this difference area. So, while we're here, let me explain different symbols that we have. You can see here in this, first of all, in the status line, it says file 3 is different than the other 2 files. Different. If we go back to a previous example, you see they're all different from each other. That is, they may share something in common, but in this area of lines that are next to each other, contiguous lines, there are differences. And so they've been grouped together like this. This says they're all different. This is also shown by symbols in the gutter, which are these circles. If a circle is filled in for a file, it means that it's different than both of the other files. So that's the filled in circle. That corresponds to this. File 3 is different. If the circle is not filled in, it means this file is not different from all the other files. It's the same as one other file. So these have the non-filled in circles. That's what those circles mean. If you don't We'll talk about little customizations. If you don't want to see those circles or something, you can hide those. We'll talk about that at the end if we have time. So, so going back to the first difference, let's kind of go through an entire use of the editor to see how it works. So we've gone back to the first set of differences. Now, if I want to move the difference, the option from file 1 over, I just click it, and that goes over into the output view. And see now, you can see from the color that it was taken from file 1. Or I could have clicked this, and it would say, okay, there's going to be nothing here. There's not going to be even a blank line here, really. This means this will be an empty place in the file, but it's still marking the area where corresponding to where there was a set of differences, so you know that. You can also see that now that I've made that choice, it says 4 unresolved differences, not 5 anymore. And okay, so then you could just go down to the next difference and then make your choice, and that's moved over. And you can click the undo button to undo what you've done. What if you want to include the differences from 2 different files? You can do that. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click here, and now it's put the second difference in along with the difference from the choices from file 2 and file 3 together. You can click the undo button if you don't like that. You can also, if I had clicked file 3 first and then file 2, it would have put the purple on top of the teal blue. So it would have reversed those. Now what if you, what if this is almost right, but it's not quite what you need? You can go over here and edit it yourself also. So, and then it changes color to show that this area now is not exactly the same as any of the inputs. We could type our own difference in here. Let's see, 5, and then okay, so you know, and you can come over here and edit more also if you want to. You can go to some place where there's not a difference and edit, and in that case it shows it in a lighter green color to distinguish it from that area. So I could put you know, and then it shows it in that color. And these colors are customizable. If you prefer different colors, you can do that, and we'll show that later. So we've made, and now we have 3 unresolved differences, and we go through and just select that one and say that one, and now it says we have 1 unresolved difference. Yes, we do. Okay, and now we've got 0 unresolved differences, and so maybe we're ready to write the output. Now let's say I had a 14,000 line file and I couldn't get through it. I could just shut down GI, and if I left the editor open, then I would save, and that saves not the output file, that saves the choices I've made in the control file, which is this DFSA merge test TSF merge, and if you hover over that, you can see where that is on your local machine, that file. But if I couldn't finish, I could just leave this open. I could then you know, shut down GI, go home, come back the next day, reopen GI, and this editor would reopen, and I could continue my work from where I was. And because the control file would remember without the output file ever being written yet. But let's say we're ready to write the output file. So if we're ready, then there's a couple buttons over here. Write the output file, and that's using the name I originally chose, you know, when we set up the merge session, and the name and location. Or I could say write output as, in case I want to choose a different location, like I don't really want this location anymore. Let's say I just want to write that location. I click that button and it's done. So we go to the default layout, because remember I went to max layout just to gain a little more real estate. The let's see, let me refresh, and there it is, DFSA out, ASM. If I open that, that has the choices we made, and so then we can decide, we can test with this source file and decide whether it really works. I would not recommend using it, but and so that's the that's sort of the complete use of it. I had said, let's say we'd shut down, and let's say I'd closed the editor, but I want to work on that again. Well, it is in recent documents, so I could go to recent documents and open it. It's also, if I go to the source tab, then in this drop-down, there's a drop-down of all the merge sessions I've done recently, or you can browse the entire folder, local folder of merge sessions that you've done, because you might have hundreds, and if you don't want some of these, you can delete them, and that's fine. Don't delete the one you're working on now. So so if we did that, okay, and just while I'm at this button, let me say that you can just click the top part of that button and then drag the files over without multi-selecting or selecting over here at first at all, and create a merge session there. Okay, so let's reopen that, and I think, let's see, the next thing I wanted to talk about probably was some of the preferences. So since you might have questions about some of the preferences, I'll go ahead and talk about those now. So preferences you can find, well, first of all, you can make some local choices of preferences in this if you just right-click. And you can see we have shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts for some of the things we were doing, like previous difference, first difference. Insert block is the same as clicking on the left-hand side to move it over. So if you want to, for the current difference, if you want to move, for example, 1, the difference from file 1, that's Shift Control 1. So let me try that, Shift Control 1, and that moved over the first one instead of the middle one. And adding would be where you additionally move over a block, and that's got its own shortcut. Editing the current difference we didn't talk about. Let me go back to one that was more the one where I had the expanded. Well, let's go here. So edit the current difference. So so this pops up the ABCD send output message in a bigger thing. So if I wasn't comfortable editing over here, I could edit over here. And this has find and replace. Well, it has find. Let's see if it has replace. I can't remember. Yes, it has replace also. Control F and Control H. And so you could edit the difference over here, and then say OK, and it would be moved over here. And then so you can do most of the things that you can do with the buttons here. Okay, we had talked about what if these dots didn't mean anything to you, you wanted to get rid of them. You can hide those dots. You can hide the line numbers if you like, even for both sides if you want. And that's some of the preferences. The rest of the preferences are here in the zTPFGI options. If you go down to File Merge, there's 2 pages of preferences here. We didn't talk about the legend. The legend is an area at the bottom that shows you which color corresponds to which input file or which use up there. So going back to the preferences, the options. Whether to start with the legend expanded, whether to show those change dots, the line numbers and so forth. whether to ignore trailing blanks when looking for differences, and which input view to start with. Prime input, yeah, we should talk about that. That's one of the major things. When we created, this would let you change the prime input by default every time you start a session. File 1 would be the prime input, but let's talk about what the prime input is. So let's start another session, and we'll just use the same files. I'm control clicking to individually select those, and we'll merge selected. Now I'll say, let's say if I say file 1 is the prime input, that means that the lines from this file by default are placed into the output file, so that the output file doesn't start with empty blanks for where the differences will go, but it starts as if you had chosen everything from file 1 to start with, like you had already made those choices. So if we do that, you can see file 1's differences over here for all of them. And there, file 1 had a blank line, and this will have a totally empty, non-existent line, and this would also have that. And you see file 1's, so that's what the prime input is. And so it could save you some work if you know that 9 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10 you're going to be choosing the difference from file 1. It could save some work. In this case, though, we don't know. From our point of view, there are 0 unresolved differences because in a way you've already made those choices. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, going back to the options. Yes, that's pretty much it from this page. On this page, here's where you can choose the colors. If you don't like that for the edited output, you could make it any of many different colors, and that would change that. Syntax highlighting is not really noticeable in this. It mainly shows up as bolding on some of the keywords and on the registers and things like that. But you can choose to use syntax highlighting or not for this area, for this editor, I mean. Okay, I believe, and the Navigator you can click, and wherever you click is where you, the nearest difference to that is where you'll go. And the current difference is shown by coloring in the area, the difference, connected differences in the Navigator also. Okay, that's an overview of the file merge. Are there any questions?
Yes, Ed, we have few questions, and David has asked a question. Can you repeat the GI version this functionality is present?
Yes, it's in version 1.3.7.0, and we do. As I said, we had a couple of bugs there. The major bug we had there was that for very, very large files, one of the open operation and the save operation were slow. We fixed that, and the next version that comes out will not have that problem.
Okay. David, hope it answers your question. And there's one more question from David again. And can you demo an attempted edit of one of the source files?
Okay, we can't edit the input files. We can only edit the output file. So the files on the left are read-only, and the file on the right is read-write, or well, write basically.
Okay. And the next question that he asked us, can you demo a C or C++ merge that has a line length of greater than 80?
Okay. Let's see. I'm wondering if I have a good example. Let's open this. This is not we can create a line length of 80. Let's see. First, let me duplicate this file. Let me see here. New. Where's new? There it is. New file. Okay, and so we'll take one of these lines and make it longer than 80. That one won't do. This one will do. Just a second. We're having a problem here. Don't know what it is. Oh. Well, this is not a problem with three-way merge. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm not sure what that was. There we go. So that's longer than 80, and that's line 80 too. That's a coincidence. And then we'll go to 3 and go down to line 80, and we'll make this longer too, but a little different. Oops. Okay. Okay. So those, and we'll just add another change in here to make it complicated. Why is it starting a process on me? I don't know. Okay. So now in that area, these three files are different, and only in that area really. We'll close that. Okay. So there's the original, and there's the other two. There we go. Pair merge, merge selected. Okay. And we'll just do and we'll start it. Okay, so let's get to more room. So we're looking to see, was there something particular you wanted to see about this, David? Seems to work okay.
No, you're doing good. This is the response from David.
Okay. Okay, good.
And there's another question from Philip. What if you want to include two of the changes?
Yes, if you want to include two of the changes, for example, here, I can hold down the Shift key. Let's say I want to include from 1, and I also want to include from 2. I'll hold down the Shift key, and then it moves over the 2 also. So I've got 2 of the changes included. So you can do that with the Shift key or with the keyboard shortcut, and then move them both over.
A gentle reminder to the attendees, if you have any questions during the session, please click on the hand raise button so that you'll be unmuted to proceed with your question, or you can enter your question straight away in the chat box. There's a question from Edgar, and I have unmuted you. You can proceed with your question.
If I use a prime input and for some reasons I have to end the session, is there a marker that I can use that I can go back to the same location when I restart GI?
That's a good question. I believe that it will go back to the last difference that you happen to be, the last active difference you happen to be on. So when you reopen, it would be back on the same difference you were at. Let's verify that. And there's no other marker besides, well, that would be the active difference, I think. So, so to reopen that, I think this is one we were using, and see, it doesn't come. If I had, we're on difference 1. Let's go down to difference 2, and then we'll save. we'll close it and we'll see if we come back to difference 2, and that would that would let us know that what I remember is correct, that we go back to the current active difference. Yes, it's on difference 2. So that would be the way you would need to use to know. There's no other way right now. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
Ed, David has continued his question that can you please complete the C or C++ file merge by saving it?
Sure. Okay. Okay, so go back to C or C+ file merge, and we will, okay, we've got those two choices, so now we'll write the output. The output is supposed to go to cpptest.cpp. We'll write that. If, we do need to come over here and refresh the folder. And there's cpptest.cpp. Now it's somewhere around line 80. We have the first from file 1. This was from file 1 because, the line didn't go beyond line 80. And this is from file 2, and it did go beyond line 80. Is that good? We should get David on our testing team. I'm sure he's too busy doing what he's doing, but these are good challenges.
And for the attendees, if you have any more questions, please click on the hand raise button so that you will be unmuted to proceed with your questions. Or you can enter your questions. And we have answered all the questions now.
Okay, good. Well, I'd like to thank everyone on my behalf for attending the presentation. I hope if you have any suggestions, you'll let us know.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. A short survey will open up. You can specify topics for upcoming webinar session. We will send you webinar follow-up email within a week's time, which will contain the link of this recorded session. If in case of any queries, contact customer support executive or write to productinfo@tpfsoftware.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and we have webinars followed on second Wednesday of every month. We'll see you next time. Thank you.